Hey everyone, Dan here. Before we get into it, if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe button. And keep in mind that these are my own thoughts, opinions, and ideas. These are not meant to be, nor should you take them as, investment or trading advice in any way, shape, or form. Do your own due diligence, put in the work for yourself, and make your decisions based on that. Enjoy. All right, folks, here we are on Tuesday, April 16th. We're going to take a look at RXRX today. So I've seen a little here and there about RXRX. I've never looked at it until today, so I put these levels on the chart that we would come and see where things are situated, how things are looking, and then flip over to the ThinkOrSwim study, do the same there, and call it a video. So, not a super deep past on RXRX. First price getting put in here in April 2021, so 3-ish years. And much of it spent in this range that I plotted, 1270 on the high end down to 596 on the low end. So basically $6 to $12, say, accounts for a bunch of the price action, and that's basically where we find ourselves today. Now, really herky-jerky action since about May of 2023. You see this run up and then this pretty significant drawback, retraced a bunch of those gains, and then this huge jump up that left this big gap. This day it was up over 78% and left this huge gap here. The gap, it's come into it now, and so it would have entered it from the top side at 1059, and it would fill it on this day. The high was 723, so it's getting very, very close to that at the moment. And so that's maybe something to consider, as it has pretty quickly filled it after it had run up. But sometimes we see these stocks kind of trace and retrace through previous gaps, especially ones as large as 78% in a day. And then falling back through it relatively quickly. And, it sort of like had an uncontrollable fall there, right? It got up here to 16, couldn't hold it, fell down through, got back into the gap right around here, and it filled it pretty easily. There wasn't much sort of pushback, if you will. It didn't try to pull out too hard on too many occasions, and then it just couldn't stop the train downward, and actually dipped below $5, and then has made its way all the way back up to over $14, and now has sort of like roller coasted its way 14 to 15, and now back down to the mid sevens. So quite an interesting roller coaster that it has going on here. Now, the levels that I see on the chart, it ended up slipping this 771 level that I have on the chart, and we'll see if it sort of confirms that as resistance by either trying to push through it again and failing, or if it just sort of leaves it all together and just kind of like moves through it, like we see this 1002 level just kind of moved through it. And if it does so, then 703 to the downside, and then 596. There's certainly some other levels in here. I didn't want to clutter the chart too much, but 649, maybe just call it that psychological 650 level, seems to sort of make sense to me. But I tried to pull in what I felt were the strongest levels and not throw up every single level that was possible, and then it's just a cluttered mess. So just know, in these wide areas where there's huge percentage change between levels, there very well are likely some more granular levels that will evolve or that already exist. Now, if it's able to retest this 771 and get a foothold there, and even if it sort of like consolidates along that line for a while and then moves 888 to the upside, 1002, and then 1270. And again, obviously there's a huge gap there percentage-wise between 1002 and 1270. So, one call out that I'd have is certainly here around, say, 1092, like that approach to 11. Looks like it makes sense to me for an additional resistance level, but we'll see if that sort of takes shape if and when it even gets there. On the ThinkOrSwim side of things, trigger and fire way back here, you can see, let me pull in these two triggers and fires. You see trigger and fire here, that set off a really good move, so good call outs. That move went from the mid sevens, about where we are right now. That brought it all the way up here before it pulled back into the 14s, pulled back into the mid range of the channel, sort of hugged that a bit and then went for a second round, right, and pushed back up and then pulled back in, just immediately slipped the mid-range of the channel. So to me, that's not always sort of a death knell, but that can be a bearish sign when it pulls back in, especially having been out of the channel twice or 3 times, I guess you could say, in recent past. And then when it pulls back in, it just slides right through the mid-range of the channel. Doesn't do what it did here, right, where it tries to hold it. Doesn't do what it did here, which is bounce right off of it. It just slides right through it, immediately flips it to resistance, and then pushed down, confirmed it as resistance here, and then has just been trickling down ever since. Now, today's price action puts it out to the lower bound of the channel. So the question is going to become, how long is it going to spend outside of the channel, and how does it engage with the channel when it makes contact with it again? And there's a few options there. Let me see if there's... So let's see what this one looks like. So just to keep downside to downside. So it kind of continuously wrestled with the lower bound of the channel here. You see it didn't sort of get into any position where it had no contact with the channel. And so it had continuous contact here, but it was treating the lower bound of the channel as resistance, right? And that often is going to mean that it has additional momentum in the direction in which it's moving to exhaust before it's going to be able to work itself back into the channel and give itself a chance to stabilize or reverse. And so we saw that play out here as it was just sort of wrestling and then treating it as resistance. Finally, it was able to move back in, and when it did, it was able to test fully the mid-range of the channel. So that can be a good sign in terms of like at least giving it capacity and capability for stabilization or reversal. And what did we see? It was able to hold in the channel, and then it started this nice move upward as it flipped that mid-range to support and was able to just continuously ride it. And then on this move out of the channel, again, came down, tested the mid-range, found it as support, and continued on its merry way. So it'll be interesting to see when it does move back in, or if it tries to re-engage with the channel at some point. Does it treat the lower bound of the channel as resistance? Again, that may mean that there's additional bearish momentum that needs to be exhausted before it's going to be able to try to push back into the channel. Does it come into the channel but treats the red wave cloud that you see here as resistance? Again, that can be slightly stronger or more bullish, but overall, it's still sort of in the vein of additional bearish momentum to exhaust. Again, these are can-bes, they're not definite. It doesn't always take shape. It's just, more often than not, it seems to me that that's what we see. At some point, if and when it does re-engage with the mid-range of the channel, this bright blue line, that's when you want to see, like we talked about over here, does it push off of it, come back down? Does it push off of it and get pushed back out of the channel, right? That's obviously not a good sign. Does it get pinned between the mid-range and the lower bound? Again, not a good sign, because it's just going to continue to draw down further and further. Or when is that point in which it at least pins itself to the mid-range, or even better for the bulls, flips it to support, and then it can be sort of some reversal time. Now, it depends what you count as a reversal, how much of the previous losses you're looking to claw back. But at least there's some sort of retracement and regaining of those losses to some degree. What percentage and what extent to which that happens, of course, you kind of have to wait and see. But it's at least moving in that way in a bullish direction if you are a bull. So that's my view on RXRX. Of course, if it gets out of this range from 596 on the low end to 1270 on the high end, I'd be happy to come in and take another look. Just leave me a comment, send me a message, let me know if you'd like an update on it. But for the time in which it's going to spend in these ranges, I feel comfortable with these levels for the time being. Also, if it starts to put in a bunch of price action at or around 10, or above it, I'd be happy to come in and sort of pinpoint some additional levels in there, because they certainly already exist. But again, if we're not wanting to clutter up and wanting to give ourselves enough sort of spread here, in case it does move really quickly one way or the other, I erred on the side of covering more ground versus being more sort of surgical and honing in on a zone and putting in more price action. All right, folks, I hope that your trading week is off to a good start. And as always, I appreciate you watching, and I will see you in the next video.